Hi, I'm Denise and I'm the founder and therapist of Infinite Hope Counselling. I wanted to come on today to do a vlog, the fifth in fact in the short series that I'm looking at common themes and threads in the counselling space. You may have seen some of my recent posts, or you can see from my YouTube channel other videos I've done. I've really chosen to hone in on those themes that my clients experience or I find relevant to particular work within the trauma sector. Today, I'm just going to talk about imposter syndrome, and I know it's something that many of you struggle with, many of you will be aware of, but I really want to look at the difference between common imposter syndrome and then the imposter syndrome and the depth of it when you've experienced trauma. So, imposter syndrome is something that I think has been widely publicised. There's so many TED Talks, YouTube videos. It's mentioned on call-ins on This Morning and other breakfast shows. And I think it's a way that we can actually pin down some of our feelings. So for those of you who aren't familiar or don't quite understand what imposter syndrome is, I guess my experience of imposter syndrome is when you feel like you're going to get caught out because you're not good enough at something. So for an example, you could be really good at your job, but you've got a big presentation to do for perhaps people high up or people you don't work with on a daily basis. And you have this pit in your stomach, a depth of fear that you're going to deliver this presentation and they're going to decide you're not good enough, they're going to sack you because you're not good at your job, and the anxiety and the thoughts and feelings around that get so big that sometimes it feels like an impossible barrier. And I think imposter is a great way of saying it. For those of you who know me outside of the counselling realm and are watching this, you'll know that when I trained to be a therapist, I got delivered the news that I'd passed my exam. And the first question I said was, are you sure? Do you want to double check? Because I had that whole imposter syndrome of, really, me? I've passed it, you sure? Because again, it didn't feel like I had the knowledge it was good enough, and that was a long time ago. But I think it's really important to understand that everybody gets imposter syndrome from time to time about all sorts of things. So why am I talking to you about imposter syndrome? Well, the truth is it can lead to some really debilitating symptoms, heightened anxiety, panic attacks. You can withdraw, it can lead into depression, and just the feeling of worthlessness. And I think it's really hard. And, people try to be helpful, your friends or your family, and they'll say, oh, come on, or don't be silly, you shouldn't think that way, or, really, you feel like that. And although it's nice to hear that they're surprised that we have those depths of feeling, actually what we need to do is have them acknowledge and explore why they exist. And I'm very much believe that this imposter syndrome is a shame-based response. I think it's shame's way of saying to us, protect yourself, make sure you're good enough, or don't do that because you're not good enough and you don't want to embarrass yourself, even if that's unfounded. And it's important to remember that shame doesn't always work on logic. Most of the time it works on feelings and emotions. So as a trauma therapist, I see imposter syndrome often in the counselling space, whether that's in relationships, whether that's in friendships, whether that's in work. Often clients will say to me that they feel like they're not good enough or don't deserve something, and it's like they're living someone else's life. So recently I had a client who is engaged, and they said no because the first time, because they felt like they couldn't possibly say yes to someone that they didn't deserve and they weren't worthy of living a life with. And if they got married to them, actually, would they then find out that who they really were and wouldn't want them, and they couldn't go through with that. And we did some work on how to calm those nerves and really dig deep into what was that about, and what were they holding on to, and why did they feel like that, and how much rejection might their partner feel from them saying no. I'm happy to report they are engaged, and they are in some point in the future going to plan a wedding, but it's that depth of it. And I think with people who've had trauma, our shame responses are so heightened and we're often not believed. If we think about something like child sexual abuse, often people would have told somebody, they would have said something that was happening, and maybe not in graphic detail, but they would have tried to convey something was happening that wasn't okay. And often that's minimised or squashed, or they're told they're lying, or don't say things like that and go and play. It's so common that children would have reached out for support and not got it. And then if we take the other end, sort of domestic abuse, sexual violence, particularly with rape, we're often not believed or questioned in a way that makes us think it's our fault. or there's still some horrendous stereotypes around what women are wearing, what women do if they accept a drink, if they consent to a kiss, etc., etc. All of those are breathed in, and we hold on to that as this huge ball of shame. So we often think that people don't see us, or that we are somehow part of us is those things that people are describing. So when you take a work scenario, often clients I work with who've experienced severe trauma won't go for a promotion, even though they're more than qualified and could do the job with their eyes closed, because shame is holding them back. So imposter syndrome, that starts something that sounds quite small and friendly, actually can be really deep-rooted and psychologically damaging. And on a long-term basis, it can prevent you from living a good life. It can stop you from having friends. It can destroy relationships. It can take away from your career and future opportunities. It prevents you from studying. And it can be the thing that makes us feel outside of our family unit as well. You know, a lot of people will talk about sibling rivalry or what their parents expected of them. But there's something about what we expect from ourselves. And sometimes our bar for ourselves is so low. We expect nothing from ourselves. We don't see ourselves as worthy, that everything feels like we're an imposter. We can't own a home. We can't go on holiday abroad. We can't shop in certain supermarkets. We can't buy something with a high-end price tag. And this is a ripple effect, I think, in everybody's life, in every area. So it's not that imposter syndrome without trauma isn't damaging, because I think it really is. And particularly when we think of self-worth, self-esteem, self-identity, and how we present ourselves to the world, it is massively crippling. But then anybody who's experienced trauma, I think that goes one step deeper, and it becomes so intrinsically part of us, it's hard to get past it. And sometimes it's hard to see what's a shame response, what's been given to us to keep us safe, what's a normal trauma response, and what is us. And so what we tend to do as trauma survivors is that we pull it all into one and decide that we are that thing that we've been told for so many years we've heard we are. Whether that's, you know, you're not good enough to be this, that, or the other, or you can't do an office job, or you can't go to university, or who do you think you are, you can't wear designer labels. And, you know, it sounds minimal, but it can really eat away at people. So imposter syndrome is really important to discuss and explore. And, you know, one of the things I say to all my clients is, you know, do you journal? And I don't mean in a Dear Diary way where you know, although it can be that, where you write down every moment of every day, but sometimes just to take those thoughts out of your head and stop them spiraling into bigger circles is really important. You can use bullet points, you can use pictures, you can use song lyrics, you can use whatever helps you. But I think sometimes capturing it and looking at it in a really different way, you know, when it's subjective, it's out of your head, can make you really see how silly it is, or how strange it is, or why you think that. And when you, as soon as you question the why, we've got an in to talk about it. So I think if you suffer from imposter syndrome and it really is impacting your life, it's okay to reach out for support. And I think counselling can be a really good space to work through this, to hypothesize why, to understand the root cause, to work through each one of those messages so that they aren't an issue anymore, rather than just saying, well, I've got imposter syndrome, it's got a label, so that's okay. We can actually drill down into it and work out what's going to work for you. And, you know, a counselling space is a safe space, and I know that not everybody is fortunate enough to be able to financially afford counselling at the moment, and I know the NHS has a long waiting list, and I know that charities are doing the best they can, and again the waiting lists are really long. But there are a few things you can do to start looking at this outside of therapy. Journaling can really help. You can really start challenging those thoughts. You can also talk to other people who are in similar situations. So in a work setting, this really helps. So maybe there's a promotion you want to go to, or a job that you'd rather do, but you're always scared and feel like you're held back. Go and have a conversation with someone about how they got to where they are, and you'll probably find that they have imposter syndrome too. So I hope this has been helpful. It's just been a whistle-stop tour on my experience of it. If anybody's interested in asking for help, or wants to message for tips or hints on how to combat this, then please feel free to reach out. But I hope this has been useful, and I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.